And welcome back to the finals of Everyday Board Game Podcast Top 8 Debate Vincent Dutrait Art in Games. Whew, this has been a journey. This has been a journey. That's interesting.
27 U.S. states are farther north than Canada. Yeah, that's true.
Wow, what an awesomely bizarre fact. So we're joined by a number of viewers. This is actually being filmed during the virtual Game Con. And Tabletop Bellhop, who posts some really cool deals on Twitter, tabletop_deals, I believe.
Yeah.
Go follow him. He's joining us in our conversations and bringing us some awesome facts. I love hearing it. All of our friends that we have that tune in, this is the point of why we do this. So
yeah. Also, you can follow his main page at Tabletop Bellhop.
Yeah.
On Twitter.
Exactly, as you should. So our finals, Daniel, Jaipur, one of my favorite games of all time, versus Lewis and Clark, one of our biggest surprises of all time.
Yeah, honestly. And the big part for me with Lewis and Clark is because all I've heard constantly is Discoveries is the better game. Discoveries is the replacement to Lewis and Clark. And I've played both of these, and I'm like, what is wrong with you?
I disagree as
people?
well. You and I both disagree firmly with that.
Yeah. No, I do. I handily disagree with it.
Yeah. So this is going to be tricky for me. Where would you place Lewis and Clark as far as your top games? Like top 10, top 20, top 100?
It'd probably be in the top 100. I don't know if I played it enough to make it into like my top 10. I really have a good top 10. But it's climbing. It's climbing. If I keep playing it, enjoying it, it'll climb. I think a big part of it, though, is the time on it. I have long games.
It's long.
But this one can take a really long time if you're not playing efficient. Or if you're our friend Dom, who is like, oh, guys, I got to go back to New Orleans for something. Let me head back this way. And then runs away with it at the end of the game.
Which is so bizarre, yeah. All right, then this is going to be an interesting debate then.
And so for all our viewers on Twitch, as well as our YouTube viewers and the Podbean listeners, the way we do the finals is we go strictly into the categories. We do not pick a side. We don't fight a side. We go strictly into the categories. We will argue in said categories about which game you think is better.
Right. Absolutely. So is there any of these that we feel are immediately obvious?
Ease of play goes to
Jaipur?
Jaipur.
Okay. Ease of play goes to Jaipur. I give you that.
I'll give replay value to Lewis and Clark.
Okay.
Those are the only two that really jump out to me.
Yeah, and Jaipur unfortunately doesn't have an expansion.
It's got a second printing.
Honestly, I feel it has a second printing, but I feel that if you added anything to it, it would take
kind of
away.
Lose itself.
Yeah.
Honestly, Jaipur is such a perfect game as is. It doesn't really need more to it.
It's the ketchup of board games, and let me explain that. Apparently, ketchup had like a scientific study where it was considered such a perfect flavor that anything added to it would take away from it. Like if you add more spice, it would take away from what is ketchup. If you add
me personally,
more pepper,
I'm more of a barbecue guy, but yeah, I can see where you're going.
Yeah, I mean barbecue is just sweet ketchup in a way. I mean it's not, but
well, if you do it right, if you use ketchup as a base, yeah.
Yeah, exactly. Which is not
the only
uncommon.
reason you want to know why people use ketchup as a base for barbecue? Because it's already
good.
Sweet.
Yeah.
You just add a little bit more sugar to it, but it's already sweet.
And it's deceptively sweet too. Anyway, we're not here to talk about food theory. We're here to talk about board games.
As you can tell, I'm hungry.
Yeah, we haven't had lunch yet. So as far as replay value goes, let's make sure of it. Minimum number of plays for full experience. That's Lewis and Clark. Although Jaipur scores higher than Lost Cities on that for sure.
And Lewis Clark does have the promo, so.
Yep. So it has additional content, and then player range and scale. Yeah, it's a good time frame.
Other than the length of time, it scales pretty well.
Yeah.
So that's what I say. Ease of play, Jaipur, replay value goes to Lewis and Clark. So right now we're sitting at 1-1.
Okay, cool.
Let me write this down here.
Now immersion. Let's think theme matching mechanisms. I mean, yeah, you really are. You're sending workers out. You're using Native Americans. You're getting resources. You're trading. You're traveling up the river. But in Jaipur, you really are trading those goods. You are bartering in that setting.
Yeah.
And the supply and demand is there. The more you have of the items, the less it gets. Camels are a good commodity there. But I think at that point, that's when it's falling apart. It's less of...
Yeah, so for me, the reason why I would give theme matching mechanisms to Lewis and Clark is, again, I was a history major. I studied this kind of stuff. They did interact with Native American tribes, the trade, and help them move along as they go along. They only had so many supplies with them, so they had to have their scouts and stuff like that to help them along the way. Okay. To me, it fits much more thematically, especially when you get to the worker placement part where you're using the Native American to go to the tribes and trade with them or get the resources that you need. It does fit through the mechanism.
And I feel like player interaction, as far as like thematically goes, like there's less. I think there's more interaction in Jaipur.
I'll give you that. Yeah, I think there is more interaction with. Honestly, when it comes to Lewis and Clark, when it comes to player interaction itself, it's basically you're just blocking spots against the Native Americans on the board.
Or taking the Native Americans, too.
Or taking them off the board and putting them into your boat,
Right. Well, that sounds so strange as we're saying it. But memorable moments, I mean, the biggest memorable moment you can have in Jaipur is I got the camel bonus, or I just traded in 6 leather. That's amazing.
Hey, here we go. I get to take this really big, worth a lot of chips because I traded in 6 something or another or 5 something or another. So but memorable moments, I keep bringing it up when we were making fun of Dom for having to go all the back the way to New Orleans, and then he ends up running away with the game, and literally.
He invented rocket propulsion and somehow found the coast before we even could.
We're paddling up the thing and carrying our canoes, and he's like, nope, guys. We're going into orbit and then coming around.
Right. So immersion goes to Lewis and Clark. That's fair.
Yeah.
Let's
go art and production.
Art and production, okay.
Actually, let's go meaningful choices because I know who's going to win this one, honestly.
It's Jaipur.
Yeah.
Absolutely. I mean, there's a lot going into meaningful choices as far as Lewis and Clark, because in a way it's a deck builder. But
the thing that for long-term strategy, I could give that to Lewis and Clark in a sense if I wanted to, as well as arbitrary choices. You can't really make arbitrary choices, but in either one of those games. But the thing that really makes the meaningful choices in Jaipur is what we've talked about before, and that's interacting with the other player. You're legitimately trying to play smartly.
Yeah, I completely agree. Which means
and you can't make any arbitrary choices in Jaipur, really.
Oh yeah, no, you can't. You can there's spots that seem better in Lewis and Clark.
Yeah,
it's a very unrandom game, but how you play everything out, it's a really strong strategy game. But I mean that back and forth between Jaipur in Jaipur, between the two players, that constant back and forth, that is so impactful.
So here comes an interesting one. We go to art production. Both these games are beautifully drawn. So for me, the art part of it has to be a wash because the Space Cowboy version is the actual version of Jaipur I want to buy.
Yes. Yeah, and I don't disagree with that. Design. Which one has the design functionally better? I mean, the tokens. So let's talk the tokens in Jaipur though, because you have all of the fronts of them. You can see very clearly what numbers they are and how they decrease in value. You know what suit they are. And then the art on the cards themselves, you know exactly what suit they are, whether they're camels or something else. But when you flip it over, it has just the gold value that matches the same design as the bonus tokens. That's really easy to count up.
Yeah.
I mean, there's no reference card. I don't think it needs it, but it might benefit with a reference card in Jaipur. Once again, I don't think it necessarily needs it, but that's a very small thing in the design. But everything in that game makes a lot of sense.
Yeah. And the same could be said for
Lewis and Clark.
Lewis and Clark, yeah. I'm just trying to think. You have the beautiful board. You are running up the river. You are running up the mountains. The cards that you use to help you go up the mountain and stuff like that, or things. You play those right. So the design really is there when it comes to using it effectively in the game. Even the little worker placement spots are very important. So to me, this is a really tough choice when it comes down to it.
I think when it boils down to it, I would give it design to Jaipur. And the reason why I give it to Jaipur personally is because of the color differences in the tokens. They could have had printed cardboard tokens for the pieces, for the meat and whatnot, or they could have done some kind of symbology on them, or even made them a different shape.
I'll give you design just for one simple fact. The simple fact is for such a small game, the design fits it so well. They don't waste space in this game.
No.
Everything fits thematically, even though it does too in Lewis and Clark. I think Jaipur thematically, just because it's a small game, it's what, $25 at most, if that?
Yeah.
20?
It's 20, 25.
Something like that?
Yeah.
Yeah, so for such a small game, to have everything just make sense and thematically no wasted resources or anything like that,
right,
I think fits well.
Okay.
And so I'll give you that. But for me, as much as I love Jaipur, the pieces and components have to go to Lewis and Clark. You do have the wood pieces. You do have the board, the player boards, the board. Yeah, so
the card designs. Yeah.
So for personally, this looks like it's going to go down to tiebreaker in all honesty, just because these are really tough games to argue, especially when it goes into the art and design, because both of these fit their designs so well when it comes to art.
Okay. Then
the production value.
That brings it down to tiebreaker. Which one got the most votes as far as... I actually don't know which one got the most votes. Time well spent with MSRP. Yes, exactly.
Yeah.
And thank you, Tabletop Bellhop, for telling us the deals that are on that.
So, for me personally, I would like Lewis and Clark to go on. For you personally, I think it's Jaipur you would like to go on. Do you want to know who's moving on?
Well, I mean, that's the point of the podcast, isn't it?
Yeah. So who do you think the fans voted to win?
If I had to vote, probably people tend to vote against me, so I'm guessing Lewis and Clark.
And for once, you are wrong. They voted for you.
Really? Jaipur made it.
Had the second highest vote total of 2.
Phenomenal. Second highest vote total of 2. So Lewis and Clark only had 1? 0. Even Discovery's got voted for more than that.
Lewis and Clark and Discovery's Lewis and Clark journals both are the only games that didn't get a single vote.
What? Okay, wow. Ooh, that's different. But hey, Jaipur, reppin'. I stand by that game for years. I still will. I'm never getting rid of it. I own 3 copies of this game because of how much I love this game. I have 1 digital and both the remake and the original, and I'm not getting rid of either of them.
See, Tabletop Bellhop, you gotta stop doing this. You get me in trouble with my wife.
Oh man! So you heard it here. The best game.
The Vincent Dutrait art.
Vincent Dutrait art. You know, I can't believe it went down to exactly how the ranking was on Board Game Geek.
1, 2, yeah. We've actually done that a couple of times, but
yeah,
this was probably one of the toughest number 1 versus number 2 we've ever done, because both of these games I am in love with. Jaipur, both games I want to own. There's something that need to be added to my collection. But yeah, this was actually a very tough debate.
It was, yeah. So we want to thank everybody for tuning in. Let's go over our ending stuff. Next week, Monday, Wednesday, and Friday at around noon Mountain Daylight Savings Time. Monday, we are going to be interviewing Keith Mateshka with Thunderworks Games, and we're going to break down all of Thunderworks games that they've created,
as well as going through them. On Wednesday, for our Chits and Giggles discussion, we are talking about the best and worst inserts in gaming.
Yeah.
And then on Friday, we haven't decided exactly what we're going to do yet, but let's go...
Thunderworks.
Go ahead and hang out with us, people in chat, as we go through that. And I agree with you, Tabletop Bellhop. Thunderworks rocks in Roleplayer Universe FTW. Are you in on the Kickstarter for Roleplayer Adventures?
Oh, we're curious to see.
Because I am.
And then also, so tune into that. If you want to see us film this live and join in on the conversation, join us at twitch.tv/everydayboardgames.
You could also see the re-uploads of these video versions on youtube.com at Everyday Board Games 2020. There is a space between for 2020. 2020 is spaced out. As well as the audio versions of these on Podbean at Everyday Board Games Podcast. We are trying to get them onto Google as well as iTunes. It's just taking a little effort with our link.
And if you would like to vote in on our polls that we had, like for today, that is Board Game Revolution Forum at Facebook. And it is not one of our sponsors, but they're kind enough to let us post every week, and we love discussing with them. And if you'd like to contact us directly, contact us at everydayboardgames2020@gmail.com.
As well as you can find us on Twitter officially now at at EBG Podcast 2020.
All right. With that being said, I've been Daniel.
And I'm Daniel.
And thank you so much for tuning in.
Have a good one.